Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and Ophidian Destroyers, to State of Play on 6++. This is a show where we talk faction specialism with faction experts, get into a little bit of where they're at in the current game, obviously our wild post-Grotmus meta, and some tips and tricks about where the faction might be headed, things that are interesting, things that are working, perhaps things that need to change as well. And today we're focusing in on the green glowy menace that is the Necrons, and we've got a very long-time favourite and friend of the show on, Mr. Mark Crombleholme, reigning Necron dominator and a long-time buddy of ours as well. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm good, thanks, Tom. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No, absolute pleasure. Been really excited to do this one. Obviously, Necrons have had a wild couple of years, and you've been right at the forefront of that, playing them. So we'll get a little bit of a sense of the story. Obviously, I'm very curious because I'm no shatter expert. I'm interested to know what you think of that and how you're feeling going into the new meta as well ahead of events ahead of us. So let's start with you, Mark. For those that don't know you, talk a little bit about your background because you're one of the sort of probably one of the most known faces in the UK scene, and then talk a little bit about you and Necrons as well.
Yeah, so I've been playing since I was about 7, since Rogue Trader. I'm an old man now, but my dad got me into it competitively 10 plus years. Matt Robertson runs what is my local club, Northern Warlords, and realistically, he got me involved, and I entered about 10 years ago to competitive and stuck with it ever since, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, so I think you were at the first GT I ever went to at Hellstorm, playing with lots of Harlequins and Drukhari. So I say, as someone who was an elf main, how did this Necron thing happen? How did this come about?
Always an Eldar main, Tom. I mean, honestly, I got a load of Necrons in trades, in like vouchers from events and stuff. A lot of events used to be like at Element Games in places like that. And I just used to pick stuff up. And I ended up with a massive pile of Necrons, unpainted. So I shipped them all off to my mate's house and he built them for me. And I was like, okay, well, I want to paint them. So I painted them, and I painted 1 or 2 new units for every tournament for that first year, and just sort of tweaked the list as I went. And I've ended up with pretty much 3 of everything at least. So
yeah, and you've played exclusively then for almost 2-3 years now.
Yeah, I've had occasional dabbles into Chaos Knights and World Eaters just for a bit of a break, but Necrons for the most part for 2 and a bit years.
Yeah. And obviously that coincides with the launch of 10th. I think that's probably where we'll start, because I think Necrons are one of those factions that have actually had a pretty wild ride in 10th in terms of the different builds and archetypes and the way that it's changed over time. So I guess if you, from your experience as someone who was playing and competing with them at very high levels, what's that journey been like, and what have the kind of sort of standout moments been in terms of the options available and the way Necrons were playing and how it's changed?
So I think we need to just begin with a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Necrons right now very, very strong. I don't want to come on and be like, oh, nothing's perfect and all that. I think traditionally pre-10th, pre-9th, Necrons were kind of that immovable wall of just metal that slowly walked across the board, and you couldn't kill it unless you could, and if you could, you won. And that was, it was very simple, and then you could kind of go, oh, but what if I was psychopathic robots instead? And then you played all the destroyer stuff and you murdered everything, and you had a lot of fun, but you probably lost because you weren't living as long. But in 9th edition and 10th edition, they changed the whole sort of feel of the army.
Yeah.
I think it coincided with I think it was Indomitus release where Necrons were in the box. So a couple of things happened. The first thing that happened in the wider meta is lots of people had access to Necrons all of a sudden. And the new codex in 9th and in 10th, we got a whole new plastic range not so long ago. So we have a lot of models. So the codex or the data cards and things are lots and lots of choices, which I think is good. It's what keeps the Necrons interesting. Because you can change, you're not limited to like Harlequins or Votan, where you're just taking the same stuff with slightly different colours every time, or at least that's the plan. I think maybe at the minute you sort of are doing that with Necrons, but
that's something we'll get into, because I do wonder if they've been adjusted a lot over the last year or so, and it does feel like maybe the avenues are getting narrowed down now. And obviously, Grotmus might maybe has influenced that even more as well.
Yeah.
But obviously, I've seen you out there playing a ton of different stuff. You've played destroyers, you've played Catan, you've played warriors, you've played teleporting stuff, you've played advanced and chargey stuff. There's been an awful lot to do. What were your sort of, I guess, over the last year or so? What would you say your favourite Necron builds have been?
So I was a massive fan of Hypercrypt, but without Hyperthick. I didn't like teleporting super heavies around.
Yeah.
I don't judge the players that do like to do that, but it's not a style I particularly want to play. I did some practice games to make sure I could do it,
Yeah.
in case it became the only way to play them. But it's not a style I want to play. It's not. It's just not interesting to me to particularly do that, especially in a singles world where you're only focused on your own performance,
Yeah.
But I really liked Hypercrypt just for the mobility of lobbing destroyers and shooting units all over the board and seeing if people could figure it out. And what was quite interesting was, that they did figure it out, and I think that it over about a year of playing them, it got harder and harder and harder. And I think I was only able to stay roughly at the level I was at because of experience with the list.
Yeah.
But I played a lot of Hypercrypt. The one I want to play, or the one I really want to play, is Annihilation Legion.
Yes, I know. We've talked about this before.
it is. I like the destroyers. I have a soft spot for all the murder bots. But the main problem is there are 2-3 detachments at least, including Star Shatter now, where you're probably better running lots of destroyers in those detachments than you are in the Annihilation Legion, even with the buff that they got in the data slate, because they got an extra AP if they shoot the nearest target.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But I don't feel like it's enough.
Yeah, so as I say, I think I know you have dabbled in Annihilation Legion. I know James Marsden, local to me, has played it as well. So there's a few people who have been really keen to make it a thing.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's just that the toolkit, firstly in Hypercrypt, and then Star Shatter is obviously so potent that it can feel a little bit constraining. So I've got a couple of points, because obviously we'll get to Star Shatter because that's looming large in the back of our minds, I'm sure. But as far as Hypercrypt goes, obviously Hypercrypt has been nerfed successively, right? It's taken quite a lot of adjustments over time. Where do you feel that detachment is now at? Have these nerves sort of put it out of action, or do you think it still has game out there at the moment?
It by no means terrible. It's not terrible. It's still good. It's still strong. I don't think Hypercrypt, touch wood, Nottingham next week, and Andy Cohen's still going to be knocking about. But if I don't think it's very easy for Hypercrypt to win a big event without significant sort of luck in the pairings and things like that. I think the meta is presumably going to be full of things that can delete the units you want to teleport.
Yeah.
And full of things that can just, either fill the board up so your teleporting is not particularly useful, or, lots of combat. The things that we didn't particularly like to face.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's interesting, isn't it? Because I actually feel like going into Nottingham, looking ahead, my gut feeling about it is the same as LGT, where everyone was very locked in on a couple of the sparse shooting armies. Yeah. But actually, my feeling was, it will be go fast and punch stuff that ends up coming out strong. And actually, that was very much the case. Obviously, shooting armies were in there, but speedy melee that could go out and fill the board and reach you and tag you and tie you up did very well. And we saw Orcs go all the way, we saw CSM go all the way. Yeah. And my feeling with it is that actually Nottingham might prove to be quite a similar meta. I don't know if that's your thoughts on this or not.
I think it's going to be bonkers, to be honest. I think I've never been to an event where there's 30 new detachments. It's even 2 codexes is like 8 detachments or something. This is crazy times. So I think it's going to be mad, and I think there's going to be a lot of guessing games. I think the consensus is that you're going to see a vehicle meta. But does that mean that the people at the top of the game are building for a vehicle meta, and therefore it isn't a vehicle meta, and we have a vehicle heavy midboard and 400 guardsmen walking around on the top tables. I don't know. It's super interesting to me. I've been lucky enough to do an awful lot of practice games recently in the England setup and the Discord setup, and there is a lot out there to consider.
Yeah, there really is. Every time I play a game, I come away thinking I need to start again in terms of what I'm designing for, and that's a reflection on how amazing the Grotmus releases are, but also just how hard to get it right it's going to be. So I think it's going to be fascinating. So let's move then to discussing Grotmus for Necrons, because obviously that's going to be a big defining moment for them, and we have not actually covered Star Shatter yet on this channel because it got leaked. So I wasn't around at the time to sort it out. So suddenly I was like, oh, the cat's out the bag. So we've not talked about it yet. So I think it would be really good for our general viewership, and to be honest, Mark, for me, to get a sense of what the deal with Star Shatter is, what the power is, why people are excited, and then perhaps how you see it playing and what sorts of units you expect we might see in Star Shatter going forwards.
Yeah, so I have a slightly controversial opinion.
Okay.
Not well received early on. So I think it is the single best detachment on face value that the Necrons have that they've ever had.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a single faction that wouldn't give its left arm to have that detachment for them. Right? Yeah. There is no bad enhancement. There is no bad stratagem. Yeah. And the overall army rule benefits a huge amount of your army. So it is a really, really good detachment.
Yeah, and it's a shooting boost, right? Is it assault and additional?
Not really. No, I think at face value it's a shooting boost.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically, you get +1 to hit if you attack something on an objective.
Okay.
Yeah. And you also get assault on all your vehicles and mounted. So your vehicles and mounted really benefit.
Yeah.
But +1 to hit also really helps flayed ones. It really helps Scorpex. It really helps wraiths.
Everything skirmishing. Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. Everything you want to do gets a little bit better if it's fighting on an objective. And it gives you access to. They're not the easiest things to activate, but it gives you access to fall back and shoot.
Yeah.
With an enhancement, it also gives you a -1 damage enhancement, and that's really big. That's my favorite enhancement because of the style I like to play, which is destroyer heavy. There was an awful lot of flat 3 damage in the world. Yeah. Exocrines and God knows what else became the bane of my life for my destroyers because I could go out, kill something, and then I died. And it takes a lot more effort to kill a unit of destroyers now, which I like. Yeah. So. But it buffs everything. Even Catan get a little bit of a buff. I mean, they didn't really need +1 to hit, but it counts as -1 to hit now. The main benefit they get is there's a reactive move when shot stratagem.
That's huge.
Yeah. So D6 for Catan and normal stuff, and flat 6 for vehicles and mounted.
Okay.
So you can, if someone dares shoot your Nightbringer, then you can, theoretically hide behind a wall. Very little base. You need like a 2. If you're on the corner, you need a 2-inch to hide from the rest of what's coming. But also, if it's towards the end of the list and someone just gets a bit sloppy and shoots your Nightbringer, you get D6 inches extra movement.
Go forwards. Yeah.
So it's really strong and it benefits almost everything in the book. There's very little that doesn't benefit. Then there's the but, I guess, right? So the but from my point of view is I don't like it as on a personal level. Right? I find that the first time you write a list, you go, okay, cool. I'm instantly putting 3 Doomsday Arcs in there.
Yeah.
And I probably want to put the Silent King in there because -1 to wound and -1 damage on the Silent King is so much fun. Then there's a stratagem to move through walls, and there's an auto advance 6 stratagem. If you've got a couple of CP saved up, you've got this torpedo of slightly unkillable death goes forward. And I think that's the first asterisk. is even the Silent King is not unkillable with all the defensive buffs on Earth. He's just not. He does die, and in the current meta, if you look at like the Ultramarines or like Centurions with last cannons or any of these things, they can kill it. It's not the easiest thing to kill by any stretch of the imagination. It's hard to kill. You do have to probably commit to kill it. But he is killable. And that reflects down the line, then that reflects down to, well, Doomsday Arcs. Doomsday Arcs are quite tough, right? There are 4 up invulnerable save vehicle, which is great, right? Toughness 9's not particularly good. 14 wounds is a little bit above average for that kind of tank. They have a great damage output potential, but it is D6 plus 1 blast. So
I've found them very swingy.
Low. And if you do enter a vehicle tradey meta, there is a world where you poke your nose out and you go to shoot something with a Doomsday Arc and you roll 2 shots into a vehicle, and even if they both go through, it's 8 damage, and you don't feel as proud as you should with that 8 damage, and then you potentially lose that Doomsday Arc. And from a style point of view, I personally feel like it sort of promotes you castling up a little bit, either around the Silent King, or if you don't take the Silent King, then around a Catacomb Command Badge with an enhancement for reroll 1s to hit and wounds.
Right,
He's like a mini king. He replaces.
So that obviously makes those shots very efficient if they're firing on an objective. It's like a lot of stuff through.
Yeah, but it kind of promotes that castle style, whereas being fast and in vehicles with like auto advance 6 and having assault kind of promotes you to move away. So for me personally, I get caught between both wanting to stay for my rerolls and to run away and fill the board up. That's a skill thing, and it's a style thing for me. I'm not particularly not fond of castling up and waiting and seeing.
I understand that, and it does feel. I think the stratagem, the reactive move strat, although people will have a lot to say about it, it feels like that classic like Necron brinkmanship situation, right? Where you're like, when it works and you don't die and you move, you're going to feel brilliant, and then sometimes they're just going to dunk the thing, and then you're like, well, now the thing is dead, and that's always been Necron's issues. Like sometimes they just answer the question and take the unit out, and then there's no reanimating, there's no taking advantage, there's no capitalizing, right? So there's definitely risk in here, right?
Yeah, there's risk, and also 3 Doomsday Arcs is 600 points.
Yeah,
which is not to be sniffed at, and they are a very sort of cumbersome unit to move and get around. But it's not hard. You can play around it. That is something you do need to practice, is where you can deploy, where you can hide. And the detachment makes them better. I do think they're probably in for a bit of a points increase down the line. So I won't going to rely on them too much, but I'm certainly going to use them for now.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be the guy that doesn't take the gift horse,
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it's definitely one to capitalize on. I'm curious because obviously mounted stuff gets a buff in here. Does that mean Tomb Blades are back on the menu? Those kinds of units?
So I think it does, but that brings me to the other point. Once you start investing in what's definitely good, which is Doomsday Arcs, because they're good in every detachment.
Yeah.
And if you take the Silent King as well, which is, I think, at least initially, it looks on paper like the best way to run the detachment.
Yeah.
So you take the Silent King and Doomsday Arcs, you spent 1,000 points on 4 vehicles. And you can split your defensive buffs across 2 of them, or you can put them both on 1.
Yeah.
Right? But no one's really had problems killing Doomsday Arcs before. And if they haven't got a defensive buff on, then they're exactly the same world. They will still die if someone tries to kill them eventually. Always the 4 up invulnerable save lets you spike, but I don't want to play a game where I'm just relying on rolling 4s. And if I did, I probably wouldn't do it with this detachment. Combat benefits quite a lot. So score pet destroyers, if they can get onto an objective, then +1 to hit. So 2s full rerolls on the charge, and 2s full rerolls if they've been charged as well, because of their inherent rerolls built in. And if you can get that +1 to wound stratagem from Strength 7 as well, they really benefit, and it sort of plugs a hole in the Necron Codex in general, which is that the Necron Codex hasn't, outside of a couple of Catan, the combat has never been particularly menacing. Right? It's always it's been combined armsy and balanced. With a skew to shooting, or to chucking a load of Catan at people. So the Star Shatter really helps with that, but that's a 200-point unit. You run out of stuff quite quick if you try to build the list to take advantage. Is kind of the point. So I think the best players can kind of pick you apart. They can outmaneuver you. They can pick you apart, and then it's just not as scary. Especially the lists that can afford to not have units on objectives, and they nullify half your army value. Whilst I played Admech yesterday, and they were just, there were so many of them running at me and tagging me up in combat and stuff. And it's problematic to try and fight out of that and avoid that. It's not impossible, but it's a really, really strong detachment. I think it has problems for the game.
Okay.
I think it is clearly too strong. There's nothing bad in it, right? So from a Necron player point of view, I don't like it because it's not particularly easy to use. So it doesn't help new players come in. It doesn't help people that want to go on autopilot. And at the same time, without being particularly easy to use, it doesn't really take that much skill, which sounds very complicated. It's just kind of, I guess it's predictable. It's like, well, I'm going to deploy here, and I'm not hyper cryptic, I'm not uppy downy, and I might have a couple of bits and pieces in reserve, but realistically, I'm starting here, and I'm going to move out fast if I want to, and I'm going to try to kill what you give me. And if you give me too much to kill, you'll lose. And it's just weird. But I think it's problematic for the Necrons as a whole because it completely takes away Obeisance Phalanx as being useful.
Yes, just after it got buffed as well, right?
Yeah, there is everything that you would have took Obeisance Phalanx for, like a tough to kill Silent King or tough to kill vehicles, is gone because you get tougher to kill vehicles in Star Shatter. Everything, well, not everything that you take maybe Awakened Dynasty for, you probably are better in Star Shatter. Hypercrypt, the way to play Hypercrypt at the minute was probably still teleporting Doomsday Arcs around, and it feels like you're probably better doing it in Star Shatter, and that's kind of the problem. And a lot of the stratagems that are in Star Shatter, it's kind of like if they'd spread the riches a little bit, which I know wasn't the intent of Grotness, but if some of those stratagems were across some of the lesser played detachments, like Annihilation Legion, if Annihilation Legion had mounted units can walk through walls, I feel like that would be a really good buff for Annihilation Legion without making anything broken. Star Shatter didn't have it, and it's the similar little things like that I don't think that the detachment is good for Necrons, and I don't think it's good for the game. I do think it's going to win a lot of stuff, and I think it's going to get the win rate up. But I do think I don't think it's going to be oppressive in terms of like Eldar oppressive. It's not going to be like 70% win rate. I think it's going to be mid-50s. I think it could go to 60 UKTC. I think UKTC is going to favour it a little bit. With the lines that we have to fire sort of straight into deployment zones at times. That's not criticism of UKTC though. It's just very different from a WTC style. I think in WTC, it's not necessarily even a shoo-in for the best teams detachment because I think I don't know what role you'd want to do with it. I've been trying it out as a defender and enjoying it and winning games with it, but I think there are other options in teams that are interesting.
Yeah, For sure, it's interesting because I think I've detected there's been a general air of a little bit of dissatisfaction amongst some Necron players with it, and I guess it's for the reasons that you say, right? It's that feeling of, well, there's a few other quite flavorful detachments that could have done with some bringing up that maybe now get eclipsed even more.
Yeah.
It does feel a little bit linear in what it's going to do. And as I say, for me, on first observations, the parallel was Bringers of Flame, right? Where it's like, well, ultimately, it's going to roll along, it's going to shoot better than most other things out in the meta right now, but it's then vulnerable to other kinds of approach that will say, well, I can't beat you in a shootout, so I'm going to do something completely different, and then it's quite challenging.
Yeah.
And it's just whether it finds the sort of the volume and the guard to play out in that way. And obviously, Hypercrit was so expressive because anything that gives you that amount of ability to move around is so expressive and so silly, right? You can do so many things with it.
Yeah.
But it's going to feel more linear by comparison, and that's a bit of a drop down in some ways, I guess, in terms of playing experience. Is that fair to say?
It's boring.
Yeah.
That's how it's boring. I didn't want to say it, but it is quite boring. And yeah, but it will win. It is good. It is not a bad detachment. It's a great detachment, and it's full of great things. I don't want to be the woe is me. It should win games.
Yeah.
It should be a really strong list, and you should prepare for it.
Yeah.
But it's boring to play, and it does have weaknesses, and it does have problems. And I think once they're exposed more in the meta, I don't think it's that big of an issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it will get nerfs in the data state. Little tweaks. I don't think it's that heavy. But what I worry about is that the reaction to Star Shatter affects points values too much, so that all the other detachments.
And that's the issue, right? Yeah, it's the adjustments, because Necrons have already probably been through more than their fair share on this front, right? They've had a lot of units whacked around in different ways over the last couple of years.
Yeah, apart from Doomsday House, they got a 10-point reduction for no reason, and recently there's a lot of give and take with the Necron points, and I think that's because you have a broad book. I guess lots of units, but it's not necessarily deep. There is an awful lot of AP2 damage to in that book on what's supposed to be your most killer units. You know, when it's not killy, but when you compare it to like another combat pressure army, it doesn't have the punch.
Yeah.
There's no real access to advance and charge, so it's always counter punching and shooting. But yeah, it's not bad. It's a great detachment. It's going to win.
I'm sure it will do well.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Obviously, we've talked about the core of it in terms of Doomsday Ark, Silent King, these kinds of things. Do destroyers make it in? What kinds of other interesting units are in the mix, would you say, for Star Shatter? What sorts of things have you been enjoying?
So my list doesn't have the Silent King. I've chosen not to.
Oh, nice. Him. Okay, cool. Yeah.
He is good. He's great. I have got a record of having never used him at a competitive event, and I'm just kind of doing it out of pride at this point. He's ready. He does exist. I'll show you.
Look, there he is. Look,
he exists, and he's painted,
beautiful,
and he's still not coming to Nottingham. But he's I don't like him. I don't like 400-point units.
No.
Are destroyers worth it in Star Shatter? Yeah, 100%. That is factually true. And then my heart tells me they're worth it in every other detachment too, but they might not be. In particular, my favourite is just a classic 6-man Locust Brick, which is just a beautiful thing, especially with a Lord. Strength 5, AP2, 2 damage, 3 shots each, and the Lord gives them lethal hits on 5s. Then you have built-in reroll 1s to hit versus nearest eligible, and if it's on an objective, 4 rerolls.
Oh, very nice, yeah.
Yeah, that is in everything. And if you chuck it into Star Shatter, you're getting +1 to hit if you're shooting someone on an objective, and you have access to +1 to wound as well. So you can brutalize something that doesn't like AP2, or you can shoot Custodians and kill 1. See my London GT stream game for more information. But yeah, they're very good. 1 unit with a Lord, and I give him the -1 damage relic. He doesn't normally put it on himself early. I normally chuck it on a vehicle that's going to go out and risk itself, so I've got -1 damage on the vehicle. And then later game, so turn 3 maybe, the Locust Brick comes out, auto advances, moves through a wall, and obliterates something, you know? That's how I tend to play it. And then it has the -1 damage on itself at that point, and it is tricky to kill in the later stage. If you've killed the main threats, then it is tricky to kill. And then when you take into account resurrection orbs, reanimation, the stratagem that we have access to, which is reanimate at the end of my fight phase, it becomes a bit of a pain for people then. But if you put it out too early, it will just die. You'll lose it, and it won't feel worth it. Heavy destroyers that are anti-tank, so the Gauss destructors. I use less of them in Star Shatter than I did in Hypercrypt.
Okay.
But I still have a unit of 3.
Yeah, okay.
Because for what I was saying before, I found that relying on a Doomsday Arc to kill a vehicle on its own, you have that moment where you roll a 1 and you don't want to spend your CP because the detachment is CP intensive. So I like having the Locust Destroyers to toss out, and they'll either kill a vehicle outright. There's a potential 18 damage in there, but even if 1 goes through and I do 6 damage, I feel a lot more comfortable finishing it off with the Doomsday Arc. So that's why they're there. Not in my list, but a great unit is the Emitic unit.
Yes, yeah.
Because you can build a different kind of list. One of the enhancements you can take is Ignores Cover. I feel like it's probably the one that gets left behind most often because all the enhancements are good.
Yeah.
But if you do take it on a Lord and the Lord joins this Emitic unit, you're all of a sudden 36 shots with sustained 5s, strength 6, AP 1, ignores cover, +1 to wound if you're shooting someone on an objective. So you brutalize most things.
Yeah.
Strength 6 +1 to wound. And that weight of fire, you are really, really enjoying yourself. A +1 to hit as well,
Yeah.
It's real good. And I haven't got room for it in my list because I ran out of points. And that's kind of...
And that's a running theme.
That is the running theme. 3 Doomsday Arcs takes up a lot of your meat. And they're great when they work. And if you lose one early or you just roll a couple of low rolls and don't quite get through other things, it's less impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they get a little points hike, I feel like I'll be happier moving to 2. But I feel like 3 is the right call at the minute. So I painted the 3rd one the other day. Yeah. So Emitic Destroyers, all the Destroyers have value. Scorpic Destroyers have value, but I feel like they're slightly eclipsed by Ophidian Destroyers. So Ophidian's got a points decrease to 80 points for 3 in the data site.
Oh, that's nice.
And they're historically a bit pants because they are only strength 4. But having access to +1 to wound on an objective makes them a lot more valuable. And their inherent uppy downy is really, really useful in what can become a fast-moving static list, which doesn't sound...
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's right. It's having that hypercrit threat in miniature, right? Like, it keeps them honest. It forces them to deploy differently. It means they can't just full send the whole army.
Yeah. And a Hexmark Destroyer should be in every Necron list, at least one.
Yes, so good.
It's just... It's either a fun annoyance, a great action achiever, or the world's greatest murder machine to elves. I love them so much. But
they're so good. So I think that I played against James Mussins when he had triple against my GSC, and that was an event that was a very rude awakening to this idea of there are just some units out there that just love your nonsense and don't care about killing you.
It is real. It's real solid. Actually, it got a bit of a side grade that it didn't need to in the Annihilation Legion buff, because if it shoots the nearest unit, it goes up to AP3 ignores cover.
Wow.
In Annihilation Legion, which is really fun, and I think overlooked in favor of the bigger destroyer units, but it becomes a little murder bot.
Yeah, that's really very effective.
Flayed ones.
Yeah.
Small units of flayed ones.
Flayed ones just are great, right? Again, getting that mid-board presence. They're good skirmishers. They're very dangerous, and every time you underkill a unit, you're in trouble.
And +1 to wound, and they're inherently twin linked.
Yeah.
You get a lot of value out of them.
Mm.
I think the biggest winner in between the data slate and the Grotmans detachment is Wraiths.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay.
They
Yeah,
got
yeah.
they got a big points cut.
Yeah.
The Star Shatter detachment gives them +1 to hit on an objective, which is where they want to be. Like you want to be
Yeah.
pushing objectives with them, which makes them as good as Wraiths in Awakened, where they were good,
Mm.
and about the same as Awake as in Canoptic Court. They
Mm.
actually can kill stuff now.
Yes.
Strength, it's only AP1, 2 damage, but having access to the +1 to wound, and is pretty solid. They're hard to kill. I don't think the meta
They
is
are.
necessarily geared towards killing wraiths at the
It's
minute.
absolutely not. I was going to say they're a unit that I think were meta defining a while ago, but people have definitely got sloppy with dealing with.
Yeah, and I think that's an issue that I've been looking at and discussing today around Nottingham. I don't think Canoptic Court is dead. I think rumours of its demise have been
Mm.
grossly exaggerated.
Yeah.
So do a few other players that I know. And there is a world where running a load of wraiths across the board at Nottingham, it
Oh,
deals with Star Shatter quite well
it
because you have
does.
a lone up strat.
You
You go,
do.
oh, cool, you've got a Doomsday off at the other side of the board.
They absorb that kind of low volume,
Yeah,
high quality shooting really well.
yeah. It's. I'm not convinced, but I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I see
At,
it.
at the minute, I've got a Star Shatter list submitted
Yeah.
for for Nottingham.
This will go
Um,
out after Marcus submitted his list, guys, so we'll find out how he's done.
see if I fold or not. But no, I think I want to give Star Shatter a go in singles.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'll change, but I do think that Canoptic Court has got legs. I
Oh,
think
it does.
that the people I'm talking to, if they take it, I think they're going to do well with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's nothing wrong with Awakened Dynasty either. I think you can take any of them. I think
No.
Hypercrypt is a little bit too dead.
Yeah.
I think that in with the board being filled up, everyone screens out
Yeah.
9 inches, everyone screens out 6 inches. You haven't got a 3 inch deep strike anymore. If I want to get, let's say, a Doomsday Arc, which is one of the most common things, I guess, you want to
Mm.
teleport around, right? You want to make sure your big shooting units have got a line of sight. If you teleport a Doomsday Arc to the side of the board, right, unless you want to pay a CP to land in the middle, but you teleport to the side of the board, in Star Shatter, you can just drive there
Mm.
and still shoot. So it's pointless, and that's if that's the only place your opponent lets you reach. There's just no point being Hypercrypt
Mm.
outside of a monolith or a hyperfix style list. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's dead. So I'm interested. I think if Hyperfix still turns up, I'll be sad because I'd like it to just be publicly executed. But yeah, um, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I think
There's a
those
lot in the mix, isn't there?
there is, and it's a good thing for Necron players right now. I
Mm-hmm.
do think it's got the potential to be a bad thing. I think
Yeah.
that if Star Shatter becomes prevalent and if it does overperform, I don't think it will, but if
Mm.
it does
I'm hopeful it's not
overperform,
going to be like completely out of spec. Yeah.
I think if Star Shatter had came out as the second to last Grotmus detachment, I don't think the initial reaction would have been as strong.
I agree. I think people were just ready to kick off,
Yeah,
and they were combing through, and as soon as there was one that looked better than the others, they were going to go right.
yeah,
Because things like I played against New Orcs today. New Orcs is great. It's
yeah.
really, really very good. That didn't get anything like the same buzz at the time.
No, but I think look, back to my disclaimer. It's very very good. It's the best attachment we've got on paper.
Yeah.
It is really good, and I don't want people DMing me and
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it is. It's a good world to be a Necron player in,
Yeah.
um, and I think it's an exciting time to be a 40k player. I think 30,
Oh
like I
yeah.
said, 30 new detachments is just absolute
It's
madness.
just going to be the most bonkers meta, and I mean 500-600 players as well. So just madness. Just
Yeah.
anything goes.
If I go and end up facing 2 Star Shatter and 2 Custodes and one Space Marine player, and I'm going to be very sad at Nottingham. I want to face some kind of crazy snot walking plague bearers, and what the hell is that new demon list, and all that.
Yeah, I think there'll be a good chunk of that there. Yeah, I think there'll be plenty of that out there. I think there'll be some wild stuff from demons, Tyranids who skew a little bit away from what everyone else is building with as well. So it'll be quite interesting to see.
Yeah, but it's a good place. Necrons are in a good place. They've got so many units that I don't think they'll ever be in a bad place.
Yeah,
I think the way the balance goes now with the work that they're doing, I think that it needs to be called out. They're doing a bloody good job.
It's been sensational. Yeah, amazing.
I think that the more units you have in the book, the better chance your army has at being balanced by win rate. Being good. I think the ones that will struggle are the ones with the limited unit choices.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to solve that, apart from maybe getting rid of the factions or a massive release. I'm not sad about getting rid of factions because they exist and they should be gotten rid of from time to time.
Yeah.
Especially Tau.
Poor old Tau. Can't catch a break these days. If you were gonna have a wish list, Mark, for anything you'd like to see for Necrons down the line, what it sounds like you've got a pretty clear sense of the different puzzle pieces. What would you like to see the balance shift towards in terms of Necrons and things that were on the up?
If we're talking like new Codex world, is that like what we're talking?
It's whatever you want, just in terms of balance changes, the next direction for the faction, whatever else.
Reductions in some Catan points.
Yeah,
the expensive ones, not big reductions. So a balancing out of Catan points.
Yeah,
and a limit to a number of Catan that you can have in an army.
That's smart. Yeah.
I understand why the points are so big, but one on its own isn't oppressive. It can be dealt with.
Yeah,
and I just don't see the point in running 4 of them.
Yeah.
Just get rid of the obelisk. Put it out of its misery. Take the Tesseract Vault with you, or give the Tesseract Vault. I don't know. I don't like the Tesseract Vault. It's too big and unwieldy. Like it's the model, not the rules, that I don't like. I think having models of that size isn't good for the game. I think it forces TOs to make interesting decisions about space. For anything about Baneblades, massive models just create trickier situations than I want to see. I think that you shouldn't be able to overhand the board. That's a UKTC kind of rule at the minute, which is a bit weird.
Yeah.
I don't see why I should be able to hang off the side of the board. I can. My Doomsday Ark is the size of a shoe, though, and I can hang it off the board. And it's weird. It feels weird. It doesn't feel good doing it. But sometimes if that's the rules you have to play, or you're disadvantaging yourself. I would love proper wish list material here. Annihilation Legion in particular, but just anything to have access to advance and charge. Just a genuine combat threat in the Necron book would be great. And what else? I don't know what else. I like it too much.
I think Annihilation Legion advance and charge sounds good. That sounds fun. And also maybe I think a couple more attacks with the Deceiver as well. He's earned it. I think it'd be nice if he could swing a bit. But
he's got 8 attacks. He's got more than Nightbringer.
Has he?
Unless Nightbringer sweeps.
Okay.
The Deceiver's a really sweet spot because the Nightbringer can really go for killing a 5-man Marine squad.
Yeah.
But he might fail.
Yeah.
Or he can sweep and he'll do it, but he's not, the saves come into play then. Nightbringer's got 8 flat 3 damage attacks. He can kill a 5-man Eradicator squad.
Yeah.
He can do that, and the Nightbringer doesn't always do it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Deceiver's one of your favourites. So,
I like him.
I think he's great.
I think the Deceiver in Canoptic Court is where I might explore after Nottingham.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's it.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Nottingham's ahead of us, and we're all going to find out what that means. Thank you so much, Mark, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and hopefully we will chat again in the future. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please do hit the old like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Let us know what you're looking at for Necrons. Do you like Star Shatter? Are you looking at something different? Do you think Canoptek Cork's back? Seems like there's a lot bubbling away for the faction, so exciting times. We will see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.